Hi everybody, I'm Susan and I'm an alcoholic. Can you guys hear me okay?
Could be better.
Okay, how's that? Is that better? Better? Okay. I have been through this process with the help of God and several Big Book Step Study sponsors, and I am making my living amends daily, and I've made all my formal amends, and I am working steps 10, 11, and 12 to the best of my ability on a daily basis now. I want to say that I am grateful to be sober in this fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm even more thankful that I was led to this Big Book Step Study program just about 23 or 24 years ago. And up until that point, we were just talking about how we've been around in AA for a long time. My first meetings were with my father when I was 8 years old, 9, 10. He was an alcoholic, and I used to go to meetings, AA meetings with him in New York City. And then I started drinking on my own when I was about 14 and did that till I was about 19. But because he knew a lot about alcoholism, I had an early intervention, if you might call it that. And so I started going to AA at an early age. And I ended up getting sober really for the first time when I was 21. And I had a long period of sobriety at that time. I was sober for about 17 years. However, and the reason I bring this up, I know we're on fear, and I can just tell you that really I am talking about fear because I'm living in fear right now, just talking to you guys. And I will specifically talk about fear. But it's very short, and I figure I'll give you a little bit of my my history with this program. But when I was 21, I really didn't understand my illness at all. I didn't understand anything about how it centers in my mind. I really stayed sober for 17 years on the first half of step 1. I was powerless over alcohol. I knew that for sure. I had lots and lots of evidence and jackpots to back that up. But the unmanageability that they talk about in the second half of that first step I thought was only because of the alcohol. I got in car accidents. I had all kinds of crazy relationships with people. Lots of crazy things. My life was unmanageable. And I thought it was because I drank. And then I thought if I stopped drinking, that wasn't an issue anymore. So I figured I was good. I can't understand now how I could have been so naive, because I had these steps. I can't see them from here, but I did 30 and 30, 60 and 60, 90 and 90 when I first came around. That was about all I did. And it talks about in our book how we have the fellowship of AA, and then we also have a recovery program. And so I was just all about the fellowship. Now I was young, 21 years old, and so it kind of goes along also just with being that age too, I think. But I did not care to do the rest of the steps because I kind of maybe glanced at them a few times and just decided I didn't need those. And I certainly never read my big book. I thought that doing the steps was going to a step meeting and reading about it. I really thought that. And so that is why I'm so thankful, because after those 17 years, I literally stopped going to meetings after maybe 10 years. I just, they talk about depth and weight. There was really no depth and weight just going to speaker meetings and hearing over and over about people's drunkalogs and everything bad that happened. And some people were funny, so that was fun. And some meetings had hot dogs and coffee and donuts. And so it was all about like fun, and there wasn't a lot of depth and weight to it at all. Well, I ended up having something happen in my life where pot was presented. After 17 years, it gets easier not to drink because everyone in your family knows you don't drink. So now it's almost like you have to maintain this appearance, even if you're sick inside. The 12 and 12 talks a lot about emotional sobriety. I did not have that at all. So nobody would offer me alcohol. You know, they knew after a long time, but it came into my world the opportunity to smoke pot. And I really didn't want to smoke pot, but it was kind of like something that someone close to me wanted to do. So I didn't have any tools. I didn't have a program to fall back on, and I just did it. And that wasn't good for me at all. And the only good thing about that was that it brought me to this. I knew after doing that for 6 or 8 months that I needed to do something different in this program. And that is when I got serious in my mind. I said, I'm going to get a sponsor. Now, I still didn't know about this particular way of doing the steps, but this is what I said to myself when I was going to get sober again. I'm going to change my sobriety date. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to do these steps. I'm going to be different. And then, shortly afterwards, I didn't know it was God, but now I believe it was God. I was introduced to this way of doing the steps, and it has been such a blessing in my life. Because of this work, I have been able to see that the unmanageability of my life is about my thinking. So just because I don't drink anymore, my thinking is still so easily screwed up. And so now I have all these tools. That was step one. Still, we're on step one. Step two came to believe. When I read this over with my Big Book Step Study sponsor, it was like, oh my gosh, they're writing this book for me. And the chapter on the agnostic was like, this is me. I am an agnostic. I didn't know. Honestly, at that point, I was kind of not knowing. I thought maybe religion would be a good idea, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I went to Catholic church when my mother remarried and had a Catholic stepfather, and that was okay, but maybe I'm Jewish, and I didn't know. I didn't know anything about religion, and I didn't want to know. That's why I didn't know, because I didn't want to know. And I literally used to say in my mind things like, when people would talk about God, I used to say this flippantly in my mind, God, schmod, it didn't matter. I don't want it. And I had some friends that really were very godly. So that's why I would say those things in my mind. But as a result of doing step two, which I only did, because I did come. It says came to believe. I came, and as a result of doing, then I got the rest of the believe part. I didn't believe. I came, but I didn't really believe. But in step three, I remember sitting with my Big Book Step Study sponsor, and she said to me, are you now ready to, are you now willing or ready to, something like this, I don't know the exact words, to trust in a power greater than yourself, or to believe in God. And it was like a T. I think it describes it like that in the book. It was like a T. I'm either going to believe or I'm not. What is my choice to be? I think it actually says that in the book. And I remember thinking, I have to say my choice is to believe, because I wanted to keep going. I didn't really believe at that point. I just knew that was the right answer if I wanted to work with her. So I did do that, and I made that decision. And then I got to the inventory, which is where we are now. And I spent maybe a good year. And I did this work. My sobriety date now is June 17th, 2001. And I was doing this work originally in 2002. And I spent a good year in resentments. I had a lot of names, a lot of institutions, and everything. And so after I did that resentment thing, I actually started to have a little bit of a relationship with a higher power, with my God. because she instructed me to say the third step prayer before I would write. And I was kind of practicing the fear prayer, not the fear prayer, the resentment prayer, because I'm doing the resentment inventory, but I'm still full of resentments and not knowing what to do with them. And so that is in the reading, and I'd start practicing like saying that prayer and seeing, wow, I feel a little bit of relief here of saying that prayer. And I still didn't really chalk it up to God, but it was God. It was me starting to have those vital spiritual experiences that they talk about, that they say are necessary for us to recover from this illness. So I was starting to have that when I got to the fear section, which is where we are now. And the step 4 part, I have a few notes only because I can't remember everything. And I did say the fear prayer before I even sat up here. And honestly, during the middle of the night last night, when I was nervous about coming here, and it's ironic that we're on fear, and because I'm afraid of what you guys think of me, normally, that's on my fear list, then I have all these fears. I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to be that. And I was talking with Jocelyn just before this meeting and saying that thank goodness for this tool, because I really know now that it's not my job to entertain you. It's not my job to be saying wonderful things and try to fix you. It's just my job to share my experience. She asked me, I said I would. That's all. And now I can just trust God that He will give me the words that I need to say. I can't write the whole script down and say it to you, and I can't have it all planned out in my mind because it's not going to happen, especially at my age. I can't remember it. So anyway, the step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So now at the fear section, it was good because those were the things I had the most problem with, resentment and fear. The sex inventory wasn't as difficult for me because I had been in a long-term relationship with my husband since I was 21. And so even though I had a lot of sex inventory things, like I'd use it to get what I wanted even in marriage, and different things like that I had to, because really I thought, even with the resentments, I'm thinking, I'm not resentful, I'm such a nice person, I'm always doing nice things for people. I had to see my part in it, and which I could see with the turnarounds. But even with the fears, honestly, I have been a police officer. I ride a Harley Davidson. I have zip line, jumped out of planes, and most recently did bungee jumping. I literally thought, I'm not a person who's afraid. And I had to do it this way to see. And I'm not saying everybody in the world has to do it this way, because I honestly, the first time I did this process, I thought everybody should do this. Even if you're not an alcoholic, you should do this process. I'm literally trying to get everybody to do it, but I saw that wasn't going to work. But anyway, I was ready to look at these fears, and these were my instructions. She said, list down your fears, and I did that. And then this was how simple my questions were. She said, first, ask yourself, why did you have that fear? And then she told me what to write. She said, then write, because I trusted and relied on myself to control my fear of whatever the fear was, people's opinions of me. Then the second question was, what should I have done instead? Then she told me what to write. I can trust and rely on infinite God to remove my fear of whatever it is, people's opinions of me. And then I just had to do that over and over again. I didn't even have to think. I just had to do that over and over again. And I had 125 on my list, fears. Now, they probably could have been clumped, because now I can see there's, fear of not getting what I want. There's a lot of stuff in fear of not getting what I want that now I can see it's probably all because of that, but they were all listed separately. But after doing that over and over and over again for 125 times, I started to get it. And I started to see God working more and more in my life. And I kept going on with this whole process. I did the 5th step with my sponsor. I did 6 and 7. I made my amends list and did my amends. I started, doing 10th steps and doing the latter steps. And honestly, I was really doing well in my life. I felt like I had lots of prayers through this book, and I was introduced to God and started forming a relationship with God in this book, in the first 103 pages of our Alcoholics Anonymous book. And it was because of that book that I decided I wanted to start going to church. And so that was hard because, like I said, I didn't know, am I Jewish? I don't know what I am. But it was because I had 4 kids at the time, and a church in my town was offering a mom-to-mom group, they called it. And they would have speakers come in, and they would talk about issues of like family and motherhood, but it was from a God perspective. And I remember it was so helpful to me at that time. It was this image of that moms are like a vending machine, and you give a lot. You give and give and give. And at the time I had 4 kids that were dependent on me. And if you don't fill yourself like a vending machine, you're just going to be empty. And it was about filling myself with God and, reading the Bible. And the thing that I found was everything that they were saying aligned so nicely with everything I was learning in this book. Nothing contradicted. So it was really a great learning experience, and I was able to get to know the God of the Bible, and which is my God. And so that would never have ever have happened if the circumstances weren't exactly the way they went in my life. And that is what I believe that God brought me to. That is why I did this work. And so let's see, where am I and how much time do I have? Okay, well, good, because I only have 2 minutes left. So see, I forget what I even say. So I guess I was going to tell you, like one of my fears and how I work it today is that, so what ended up happening even in this process is they talk about in the latter steps, continue to work the 10th step. As these things crop up, continue to do them. 4 paragraphs in the 10th step of warnings about if you don't continue to do your spiritual fitness, you're going to have problems. I did not. After 13 years, I kind of stopped going to meetings. I stopped doing 10 steps, what it really was, because it's not even about going to meetings. It's about doing this work outside of meetings. And so I stopped doing 10 steps. And then because I stopped doing 10 steps, I already knew God. I was going to church. I was running Bible studies at this point. But what I found is I was so fortunate. I didn't drink. I didn't drug. I didn't smoke pot. But because of a lot of different family issues that were going on at the time and still are, things that were out of my control with my children, that just felt like my world was falling apart. Issues with divorce and grandchildren not being able to see me anymore, and just everything that my life was built on was falling apart. I started feeling like I'm falling apart. And I had already been away from this. I kind of made a conscious decision. I thought after maybe a year of not going to these meetings, I don't really need these meetings. I already had the vital spiritual experience, and I already know God. So I'm good. And then I found I'm not good. I don't have any tools for dealing with this stuff. And I knew after 7 years of not going to these meetings, I can't just come back and start talking at these meetings like I never left. And that's when I asked Jocelyn to sponsor me through a second time, because I felt like I need a refresher course here. And it was very helpful. And she had a slightly different way of doing it, which was helpful too, to see other aspects of my fears and my resentments. But what I was gonna share with you is, and then I'll shut up so you guys can have your meeting. Now, one of the things, like, I'm going to share one of my 10 steps. So this is my 10-step book. I highly encourage to anyone who's coming through that you actually have a notebook that you can write things in, because you're already in the practice of writing when you've finished all that work. And it's, to me, I had to do it. I didn't have this before. I just kind of did everything in my mind or didn't. If I could get rid of it fast enough, like they talked about the spot check, it definitely didn't get written down or talked about with anybody. But now a lot of times I will write it down either way, even if I feel like I need to talk about it or not. So if it's with me, it's easy. But one of them, and this is something, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll be quiet. So I'm going to just read it the way I wrote it. I had an issue, and this has nothing to do with resentment. It has to do with how easily, even at 24 years of sobriety, even with this program, that my life can go crazy quick. So this is the cause. We, meaning my husband and I, went for dinner at Angela and Paul's house for the first time, which is the same modular home that we had gotten prior to theirs, them getting theirs, and theirs was better than ours. So we got a modular home, and it's up in New Hampshire, and they came to our home and they said, "Oh, we have a piece of property. Where did you get this?" And we told them Rochester in New Style Homes, and they actually ended up getting the exact same modular home. So we had them over to our house, which, well, I'll read the rest and then you'll know. But then they had us over to theirs. Well, theirs was better. Seriously, I'm not kidding. It was better, but I'll tell you why. Okay, so that's the cause. It affects my ambitions, my self-esteem, fear, my emotional security, my financial security, my personal relationships, and my sexual relationships, because my husband. My turnaround, selfish. Now I'm doing this in a way, this is what helps me. There's no resentment in connection with this, but because I did it, it helps me. I wanted to feel like our house was better than theirs. That's the truth, I did. The dishonesty, the lie I tell myself is that my house is not good enough. The truth is that I was completely happy with my house until I saw theirs. They are decorators, which they are decorators, and enjoy all of those details, which I don't. Also, they spent a lot more money than I was willing to spend. My self-seeking. I immediately went into negative thinking of inadequacy, jealousy, self-pity. I ruminated, perseverated. Then I had shame and guilt for having those feelings. And then I looked at my fear. What am I afraid of? I am afraid of not being good enough. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of not being perfect. I'm afraid of not having what I want, which is a beautifully decorated home. I'm afraid of not knowing how to do things, because I don't really know how to do decoration. I never have known how to do, I don't know, I'm just not a fancy person. I don't wear makeup, I don't dress fancy, and I don't do my home fancy. So I had to call a 10-step buddy and read this to her right away, because this was killing me. And I couldn't even talk about it with my husband. When we left there, he's like, "Wow, their house is really nice." I'm like, "Yep." I didn't want to talk about it. I was devastated. And then after I read this to her and we prayed, I read this to her, I felt so much better. I didn't feel humiliated that I had these feelings. I felt like, yeah, I have these feelings. But before I did this work, the only way I would have gotten rid of this, because I didn't have any tools, was that either I'd forget about it just because life moves on, or something else worse would have happened. And then, like, like somebody was in a car accident that I love. Oh, well, that's gone. Now I'm dealing with car accident. Those are the only ways, but it would still be in there. I'd still be ashamed of it. Like, I wouldn't want to go to their house. So this process really works for the thinking problem that we all have, even when we put down the drink. And I feel so fortunate to be here, to have asked me to speak, because it's my first time speaking again after I went through it the second time. And that is it for me.